So last year, I played in a VGC draft league for a trans charity, and it was pretty cool, honestly. It was my first experience with a draft league, and it was pretty interesting to see how it worked out. And today, I'm happy to announce that we're back this year. 1 month later than we should be, but that's okay. If you don't know what a draft league is, I go about it in the first season video, but it's basically where you have to draft a bunch of Pokemon with a limited amount of slots, and you have to battle each week for a couple weeks until playoff time. What's different this year compared to last year is that we have replaced the tier system for drafting to a more standardized point system. This basically means that every Pokemon is associated a point value. You have to draft 9 to 11 of them, and you have a point limit of 105, so you can't exactly spam the higher point value Pokemon, although this didn't exactly stop people from trying to spam the stronger monsters in the format. Last year, my team, the Shoal Cape Spiels, have managed to secure first place in the division before getting eliminated in the playoffs. This year, I want my run back. With that out of the way, let's meet our new roster. And I really mean new. There is not a single returning Pokemon on this team, which wasn't even by design. I kind of wanted to bring back some of them, I just couldn't fit it in the budget. Anyways, let's get to it with our first pick of the draft. Sylveon is the first overall pick for our team, and it came as a response to someone picking up Mega Gardevoir since it was part of my original idea. With that being said, I'm still fine with having Sylveon. The main objective I wanted was to have a fairy spread damage move that is just like spam like in general, because there's a lot of mods like that are dark and dragon that don't really like facing it. Although its speed is somewhat mediocre, it is offset by the other members of my team, which I'll get to at that point. Sylveon gets to spam Hyper Voice text to Pixelate as its ability, and with a Fairy Feather it gets to hit extremely hard, but it can also run items like a Life Orb, or Leftovers if it wanted. A Citrus Berry is also fine. I just picked up this Sylveon for demonstration purposes, but it does actually, ironically, really showcase some other things that Sylveon can do. Yawn is a solid option for putting mons to sleep, letting me set up for absolutely free, especially when it comes to like a Trick Room or something like that. That would be like pretty helpful for my team. Sylveon can also set up itself with Calm Mind, which lets his Hyper Voice deal some devastating damage. And just in case that someone tries to fight off the Hyper Voice spam with something like White Guard, we have options such as Moonblast, we have Hyper Beam in the back, and we have Quick Attack that are all Pixelate boosted and can do like a really destructive amount of damage. The only thing with Sylveon is that it lacks coverage. It gets Shadow Ball and Mystical Fire, but that's about it. But honestly, it doesn't need to like hit that much coverage, but even if we wanted to, we have options. Sylveon is the first pick of the draft, and it makes more sense when you look at the other picks that I've made on this team. Farigiraf is the second pick of our draft, and honestly, it was pretty much a no-brainer as after we picked up Sylveon for a couple of reasons. Number one, its ability Armor Tail is downright terrifying. There's a reason why this mod is like really meta, I would say, where it just gets to sit there and like do whatever it wants, honestly. This moveset is really just experimental. We have Twin Beam, Thunderbolt, Helping Hand, and Trick Room, which is more standard, but it gets stuff like Hyper Voice, it gets stuff like Psychic Noise as well, that blocks someone from being able to recover themselves. Stuff like Roar and could also be handy, because it manages to shut down a setup mon like very efficiently. And honestly, yeah, no, Farigiraf is just a monster because it gets to do like anything it wants in terms of like supportive options and stuff like that. And it's very difficult to remove from the field. You need to have both of your mons most of the time dedicated to KOing Farigiraf, which lets your partner do whatever it wants. It may look like Farigiraf is passive, but it really isn't. It gets a really high special attack when you think about it, so it could take some surprise KO if I were to invest in it, but regardless, Farigiraf is a really strong defensive option that my team would not mind having. But I think it's time to reveal the first Mega on our team, and it's Charizard, specifically Charizard X. I fully intended to go with Charizard X at the very start because I was fully expecting Charizard Y to be taken immediately, and Charizard X is a great replacement. Charizard X is a physical attacker that gets, when it megas, the ability Tough Claws, which makes it incredibly strong to with its move like Dragon Claw or Flare Blitz. Charizard X also benefits from having moves like Dragon Dance being pretty much the setup option that you would always want to have. But it can also have Swords Dance and even Belly Drum as an option. And even then, Charizard X, if it didn't want to go the physical route, it still has a really strong special attack stat that it can abuse with a new Dragon Stab. That it can abuse with its newly added Dragon Stab. Now, it's rare that we will use Charizard for its non-mega potential, but with that being said, if we were to, Charizard as a base form already has a Fire and Flying type, which is great for avoiding the Earthquakes that may go into Charizard X. Another reason, by the way, that I picked Charizard X is that it's a little bit more difficult to remove from the field because it's not Fire and Flying. A lot of times your Charizard counter may be to just click Rock Slide or like a strong rock move in general. But with Charizard X, you have to be a little bit more careful about that because it's not going to necessarily fight to it. Regardless, Charizard X also helps the team a lot because it lets us have a Fire and Fairy combo with Sylveon that is just very difficult to stop. Any Steel types will get blown past by the Flare Blitz, and anything that would threaten the Charizard X, like a Dragon type, is not going to appreciate a Hyper Wisp from Sylveon. And honestly, yeah, I expect Charizard X to be like a very strong option for throughout the entire draft league. Our fourth pick of the draft is actually a really far reach, as it was only like 4 points to get, and it's Hisuian Samurott. Now, Samurott by himself is a terrible Pokemon, but its Hisuian form is actually quite decent, as it gets the ability Sharpness and some pretty, like, average stats, I would say. But most notably, it gets a really decent speed stat of base 85. This makes it a very excellent Choice Scarf user, as it is able to outspeed pretty much every other Choice Scarf user in the format, including Male Basculegion. Easily the most terrifying Pokemon in the format. Samurott gets to clear that, and also be able to hit, like, for extremely strong damage with Aqua Cutter and Sacred Sword, especially to mods like Incineroar, which could be problematic. I picked Hisuian Samurott specifically as well because we don't really have much into Ghost or Psychic. Being able to just click Ceaseless Edge or even Night Slash just without impunity is really strong because Dark Stab is like really difficult to stop. Samurott is pretty much a coverage monster, but it's a coverage monster that can hit really for really decent damage with Sharpness. And it's, once again, I've said a lot about using Choice Scarf, but it can actually use stuff like Mystic Water, Black Glasses, I was thinking of the Dark type equivalent, or even items like Focus Sash. Samurott is effectively a Swiss Army knife that can just, like, hit pretty much anything that disrupts Charizard and Sylveon with it. On that note, having Water Stab is excellent, especially because A way that you can deal with Charizard X is just by bringing a ground type, which Samurott does excellently into with sharpness boosted Aqua Cutter. Overall, Hisuian Samurott could be a decent choice scarfer or a pretty strong delete button into stuff that Charizard does not appreciate. It's basically here to facilitate the Sylveon and Charizard sweeps. I figured we needed something a little more defensive and probably something with Fake Out, so that makes sense for our next pick of the draft. Kangaskhan. Now, specifically base Kangaskhan, and you might think I'm crazy because you would think like, oh yeah, you're picking Kangaskhan for the Mega Evolution, but actually no. Kangaskhan on its own gets a really strong ability with Scrappy, and a pretty solid normal stab with Fake Out and Double Edge as for its offensive coverage. And being a Gen 1 normal type, it gets like every move around the block. It gets moves like Low Kick and Rock Slide right here, but it also gets moves that are a little more ridiculous, like Thunder Punch. It gets Thunder, Thunderbolt. Icy Wind is one that I noticed that it gets, which is funny. Last Resort could be also really funny if we just decided to just go Fake Out, Silk Scarf, and just Last Resort as our only two moves, which can do some really strong damage overall. Its speed is like quite middling, and its stats are like fairly bulky, but not that much, which works perfectly with our Trick Room side of the team, especially with mods like Farigiraf and Sylveon, and the other Mega that I haven't revealed quite yet. Kangaskhan is also a good deterrent for something like an Incineroar or like intimidate users like Crocodile because of Scrappy and Aerial Focus. Having access to both of these abilities basically means that Kangaskhan will never have its attack drop ever, and with Scrappy it gets to hit ghost types with normal stab or even like fighting moves. Having access as well to a bunch of other moves that I didn't even mention yet, like Ice Punch, it gets Sucker Punch, that are both really good options. Body Slam if I didn't like the recoil damage. Kangaskhan is a solid, like, supporting option, and it can also be relatively strong. A Life Orb Double Edge from Kangaskhan is a move that you should always respect because it will never turn into an immunity. So Kangaskhan is a pretty much a sleeper pick, and it's a really solid, like, supportive slash offensive option, I would say. But having Farigiraf being relied on so much is proving a little difficult, so I got a secondary Trick Room option in Gourgheist. Did you know that Gourgheist gets all of Trick Room, Trick or Treat, and Trick? Now, if only it got Power Trick and Flower Trick, now it would be the ultimate trickster. I was actually allowed to pick all 4 Gourgeists as if I picked one, with the caveat that I need to reveal which one I bring to a game specifically. With that being said, there's pretty much only 2 that you would always want to run, which is the small variety, because it's the fastest one, and the super variety, which is the slowest and strongest one. As an ability, it gets Insomnia, but it also gets probably the best ability you could get in a draft league, which is Frisk, which lets you see the item of your opponent. Since we're playing this draft league this year on a closed team sheet, this is actually really excellent to be able to suss out my opponent's strategies with stuff like Frisk, or even being able to just trick an opponent. And even then, it gets like a lot of solid supportive options. Outside of Trick Room and the obvious trick, you get Will-O-Wisp, which is really strong. I believe Gourgeist gets Destiny Bond, just in case that I were to faint to something and be able to take down something else in return. This gen it got buffed with moves like Poltergeist, but other than that, the Gourgeist is a really solid supportive option that lets us click Trick Room without impunity. It's another notable thing, like Farigiraf, is that it's a Trick Room mon that is immune to Fake Out, which is great, because I took the only Fake Out user with Scrappy, except for someone else taking Mega Kangaskhan, which I don't think has happened. I'm looking forward to use Gourgheist. That's something I've never used before, and I think it could be really funny. Especially like the fast variant with Destiny Bond and like Focus Sash, or maybe like a strong super variant with a lot of bulk access, like being able to hit solid damage with Power Whip and Poltergeist, or just like in general, like being in an annoying Trick Room presence, especially into mons like King Gambit or like offensive. Well, not really King Gambit, but I guess you could probably have it survive a countdown cleave with Cobra Berry and then hit it back with a Will-O-Wisp. But yeah, lots of potential on this little guy, and I'm excited to use it for once. Up next we have Meowstic-Male specifically. Now, I went with the male one easily because of one thing, and that's Prankster. The main thing that I think my team was lacking on when I made the decision to grab Meowstic was a lot of speed control. Like, we have Trick Room, but there's not really a good option for like something if we wanted to play a bit more quickly with like Charizard setting up Dragon Dance and being able to hit like for really strong damage. And Meowstic kind of helps with that a lot. For one, it gets Thunder Wave, and it's a really strong like speed control option because it just gets to stop everything all at once. It gets moves like Rain Dance and Sunny Day, which are both really great, especially because there are a couple teams that will be running like whether like someone did end up picking up Charizard Y, and you have someone with a full Rain Archaludon team. Meowstic differentiates itself by being able to just click stuff like Reflect and Light Screen, and also having Fake Out for itself. So that's just like really good like supportive options. Meowstic can hold stuff like Light Clay or Damp Rock because it manages to be able to extend. Because being able to extend like the weather or like screens is really important, honestly. Another thing that Meowstic can do that I just realized as I'm recording this is that it gets Psychic Terrain, and with access to Expanding Force and the Farigiraf that has similar access to that move, Meowstic can have a decent like Psychic Terrain setup type of team that could work really, but that could function really well. It gets access to other moves as well, like Fake Tears, which lowers special defense, which is great if we want to set up Sylveon. It gets Trick Room with Imprison, which basically jails every other Pokemon from using the move. And once again, other moves like Skill Swap and Safeguard could see some level of application. So yeah, Meowstic is a really versatile supportive option that honestly, like, the only reason you don't see on ladder is because Grimmsnarl exists. And considering that in Draft League Grimmsnarl is extremely expensive, Meowstic fits the bill just well. Up next is a staple of Trick Room teams, which works perfectly again with Farigiraf and Sylveon, and that is Gallade. Now, Gallade is a very strong, like, offensive guy that also has access to really good amount of supportive options. Wide Guard and Trick Room is excellent because you get to protect yourself from any type of spread moves, mainly stuff like a Hyper Voice, an Earthquake that could be really annoying. Stuff like Discharge could also be pretty bad. And Trick Room is obviously, like, pretty much mandatory. The main appeal of Gallade is its damage, as it gets a sharpness boosted Psycho Cut and Sacred Sword. Now, the irony is that I put both of the sharpness guys on this team, being Samurott and Gallade, and I don't think I'm gonna get to use both of them, but it would be really funny if I did. Now, Gallade being Psychic Fighting means that it's not as worried about Dark types, and it's especially really strong into stuff like a King Gambit. It gets strong coverage options like Aqua Cutter and Leaf Blade that could be useful to some situations. Gallade also gets other moves like Swords Dance, but these four are basically going to be the main set for a while, other than the random coverage option like Leaf Blade or Aqua Cutter, and of course moves like Protect, but it's honestly not super needed. Gallade is pretty much the last fitting piece for a really devastating Trick Room combo, which is honestly what my team was leaning towards for like the majority of it, especially after drafting Farigiraf. You kind of want to like build around it a little bit. Either way, Gallade is a really strong option and an especially needed option to Steel and Dark types. Now, at first, my first plan was initially to draft something like Raichu X and Jolteon or something like that to have like a strong electric terrain, special damage with rising voltage, and a physical into stuff like with Volt Tackle and stuff like that. But after drafting these, I realized that my Fairy matchup was not that great, and so I decided to trade them for Mega Scizor. Now, Mega Scizor is a demon of all sorts. It gets strong damage all across the board. You get Bullet Punch, you get Bug Bite, you get Dual Wing Beat that is Technician boosted. It gets U-Turn, which is a strong pivot option, which I feel like my team was lacking, and I feel like it would have been useful to have. It gets stuff like Knockoff and Close Combat, and it gets, importantly, moves like Swords Dance that lets us set up. But all of these moves are pretty much making Mega Scizor the ultimate Swiss Army knife, especially into Fairy types. The main appeal as well to have Scizor is just that Bug Steel is so oppressive defensively, as it's only stopped by fire moves, which we can deal one with Samurott and two with Meowstic or Farigiraf clicking Rain Dance, meaning that Scizor is very difficult to remove from the field. As a base form, it still keeps Technician to do like a pretty solid amount of damage, so it's not like we're completely cooked if it doesn't, if we don't get a situation where Mega Scizor is that useful, or we need to have Mega Charizard and Scizor on the field. Another notable thing that it gets, they gave it back Tailwind and Roost, which is really appreciated. For one, we don't have a Tailwind user on the team. We have Thunder Wave maybe if we wanted to go fast, but that's pretty much it. But Roost is what I'm looking at especially, because Mega Scizor is like deceptively bulky, and being able to just recover itself means that it gets to be on the field for even longer, doing more and more damage. Bug Bite, on that note, also gets to steal my opponent's berries, so if someone ended up coming in with like a Citrus Berry, or even like a Resist Berry, I get to just take it from them, which is really nice because that gives me, in the case of Citrus Berry, it gives me a little bit of recovery, and in the case of like Resist Berries and stuff like that, it means that they just don't get to have it. Mega Scizor in general is a mod that I added very last minute, but it's a decision I'm really happy to have made, because the situations where I'm gonna need Mega Scizor, I think were like way more common, than the situations I would need Mega Raichu X, for example. Or even like other options that I considered. I think for what it is, this team looks pretty solid. Even though we have a lot of physical attackers that don't appreciate Intimidate, we have ways to counterbalance it, especially if it's an Incineroar that gets to be blown up by Gallade or Samurott, or even like Kangaskhan. So trying to intimidate the Scizor is strongly discouraged by the rest of my team, I would say. But with that out of the way, that's our entire draft. And this is the roster we will have until I change my mind and like trade some of them. But that's a problem for future me. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the draft league. because it was a ton of fun. Draft League especially last year, was a ton of fun. I mean, oops. There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. The Draft League was a ton of fun last year, and I'm looking forward to having fun with this one as well. And with that out of the way, I'll see you in the next one. On that note, I will be posting a video of the Draft League every week, ideally on Friday. Except this one.